Please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the presentation of colors, our national anthem, and the invocation. Advance the colors.
And salute.
Retire the colors.
Colors time, look!
Rear Admiral Gregory Todd, Chaplain Corps, United States Navy, Chaplain of the Marine Corps, and Deputy Chief of Chaplains will now offer the invocation.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you have given us this good land as our heritage, a trust, O Lord, from you. As we remember the transit of the unknown soldier, we are reminded that we owe you our thanks for the generosity of raising up men and women to serve our land. Grant that we never forget the sacrifices and love of all of our veterans. For those who carry the scars of war and service to our nation, grant us the privilege of easing their pain. For those who grieve their loved ones who paid the ultimate sacrifice, grant us the compassion to sit with them in their grief. For those who are still selflessly serving, grant our nation a sense of duty to support them, worthy of their sense of duty to serve our nation. Support us all in defending our liberties, and give those to whom we have entrusted the authority of government the spirit of wisdom, that there may be justice and peace in our land. Amen.
Guests, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the host of our ceremony, Rear Admiral Michael Stephan, 92nd Commandant of Naval District, Washington.
It is hoped that the grave of this unidentified warrior will become a shrine of patriotism for all the ages to come, which will be a source for inspiration, reverence, and love of country for future generations. That was Congressman Hamilton Fish III of New York on March 9, 1921, advocating for his proposed legislation which directly led to the creation of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming this afternoon, this amazingly spectacular afternoon. We could not have asked for better weather. And I think we even got a little bit of a helicopter flyby there right as the band was playing. And I'm really pleased that everybody could join us today for this ceremony commemorating the 100th anniversary of the arrival of the first unknown soldier from World War I on board USS Olympia. And welcome to the Washington Navy Yard, the Navy's oldest shore installation and the quarterdeck of the Navy since 1799. I want to extend a special welcome to our distinguished guests in the audience, which includes several flag and general officers, senior executive service officials from across the Joint Force, congressional staff members, veterans group leaders, and our allies represented with our Defense Attaché Corps, many of which have a direct connection to the return of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier's remains. I would also like to welcome the Chief Plenty Coup Honor Guard from the Crow Nation. We are humbled and honored by your presence today. I would also like to give special recognition to our guest speakers, Mr. Robert Hogue, Acting Secretary, Assistant Secretary for the Navy of Manpower and Reserve Affairs, Vice Admiral Johnny Wolf, Director of Strategic Systems Programs, Rear Admiral Sam Cox, Director, Naval History and Heritage Command and Curator of the Navy, and Lieutenant General Walter Payet, Director of Army Staff, whose presence here today has historical significance, echoing General Pershing's role in presiding over the unknown soldier's return in 1921. We're also fortunate to have with us today Navy Lieutenant Rebecca Brock, the great-granddaughter of Congressman Fish. Lieutenant Brock has kept her great-grandfather's legacy alive and continues the tradition of service to our country. I'd also like to recognize the other organizations that played a large role in making this plaque and this ceremony a reality. Military District Washington, thank you General Pepin and your team. The Navy and History Heritage Command with Admiral Cox's team, and the Defense Media Activity, who's making this momentous occasion available to online viewers who could not be here today. Thank you all. And finally, a special welcome to the Society of the Honor Guard, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and their president, retired Army Sergeant Major Gavin McElveen. Sergeant Major McElveen has steadfastly shepherded the effort to commemorate this centennial and put in this special place a fitting reminder of the historic event we are celebrating today. Sergeant Major, we're inspired by your dedication. You're loyal to the memory and legacy of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. It's been a pleasure to work with you in the Society of the Honor Guard, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier over the past several months. The speakers who will follow me will talk more about the historic importance of the World War I unknown soldier return. And so on behalf of the United States Navy, I close by thanking all involved with making this centennial commemoration a reality. The plaque we will soon unveil will reside in this historic place for decades and generations to come, to be viewed by all as a reminder of the service and sacrifice of the unknown service members buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Rear Admiral Sam Cox, United States Navy retired, Director, Naval History and Heritage Command.
It's an honor to be here, and I thank all of you for taking time from your busy schedules to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Inscribed on the tomb of the unknown soldiers is, in honor glory lies an American soldier known but to God. What few people knew at the time that he arrived here at Washington Navy Yard, and few people know today, is just how close that soldier came to having his last resting place be with many thousands of American sailors lost at sea. But before I get there, let me set the stage a little bit. World War I, was a bloodbath. Our allies suffered extremely heavily. The British lost over 800,000 soldiers, servicemen. Our French allies lost over 1.3 million. Other nations suffered incredibly. It was like nothing that had ever been seen, at least in the Western history. United States losses, we came in 3 years after the war had already started. We lost 116,500 some service members. About 63,000 of those were to disease and accident, about 45,000 due to the Spanish influenza, including 12,000 U.S. Army soldiers who died aboard Navy transports while being transported to the front. There were 53,000 Americans who died in combat during that war, of which about 3,500 were missing. And after they went through all the deaths and records and everything, they were able to have about 1,200 who remain unidentified as to who they were. And you have to understand, World War I was a battle of very few yards, muck and mire. Early in the war, the sides would declare truces and remove the dead from the no man's land. All that chivalry was gone by about 1915, 1916. So soldiers would lay out there for months, even years, which made it extremely difficult to identify them. The British and the French were the first to establish a ceremony to honor their unknown soldiers at Westminster Abbey in Great Britain and the Arc de Triomphe in France in 1920. The United States was a year afterwards. A lead advocate was already mentioned, Representative Hamilton Fish III from New York, who pushed this whole idea. He had served during the war as a major in the 369th Infantry Regiment. He was in fact a white officer in what was an all-black unit. They were known by the Germans as the Hellfighters, later as the Harlem Hellfighters, because that's where most of the soldiers came from. And that unit recently was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. However, they served under French command because the U.S. Army, frankly, the entire U.S. military was segregated at the time, and they actually served separately. But the Olympia was assigned to bring the unknown soldier over from France because she was the most famous American ship as a result of the Spanish-American War in 1898, the Battle of Manila Bay and Admiral Dewey. So that's why she got the task to do it. On the way over, she encountered the remnants of two hurricanes, and the interference pattern from the waves created about 10 days of extremely rough journey, where at times the ship would roll 39 degrees, 49 degrees, and the ship goes all the way over and doesn't come back up. The Marine Honor Guard was especially courageous as they carted the casket, which could not fit below and had to be lashed to the topside decks. The Marines lashed themselves to the stanchions, the railings, in order to keep from being washed overboard, and several nearly were anyway. Inside the ship, the engineers were knocked back and forth, not bumping, but hitting, in some cases being injured down in the engineering rooms. It was extremely rough transit. At one point it was so bad that the skipper, Captain Wyman, got the chaplain, Lieutenant Duff, called the crew together and had a prayer session, and after that the seas calmed out. So there's a lesson for you in the chaplain. And as a bit of a final indignity, when the Olympia reached the mouth of the Potomac River and anchored, her anchor would not come up. So they had to cut it loose and drop it down to the bottom of the Potomac. But the ship arrived here on a cold cold day. But 21 gun salute, full military honors, an extremely professional ceremony witnessed by many, many people. And we hope to duplicate that today. So again, thank you for taking your time to honor one soldier, other soldiers that were added later in the World War II and Korea, but representative of the sons and now daughters of the American people who've made the ultimate sacrifice that enables us to have the freedom that we have today. And we all owe them an incredible debt of gratitude. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to direct your attention to the video wall in front of you. Our partners at the Defense Media Activity have created a presentation about the challenges faced by all who were aboard the USS Olympia as she traveled across the turbulent Atlantic Ocean to bring the unknown soldier home.
Solemn images of soldiers in any weather, 365 days a year, guarding the tomb and casket of the unknown soldier, are part of the fabric of Washington, D.C. life. But the everlasting vigil began before the casket arrived at Arlington Cemetery. From the moment the casket was carried aboard USS Olympia in October of 1921 for the voyage back to the United States, a Marine Honor Guard and sailors from the ship's crew stood the watch. As Olympia Captain H.L. Wyman ordered Marine Captain Graves B. Erskine to maintain his honor guard around the clock. The people of Le Havre, France showed their respect for the unknown soldier at the departure ceremony and placed white roses atop the casket. Roses that would accompany this soldier home. The casket, too large to fit in the passageways of a ship, was lashed to the deck above the aft gun. The ship's log tells the story of that voyage.
Barometer falling. Sea state 4 and rising.
The ship sailed for 2 weeks through the rough seas of that year's Hurricane number 6, the Tampa Bay Hurricane. The ship endured 20 to 30 foot swells.
We lashed the fellow down with everything we could tie on him. Many times the wedge would go up to the bridge and in the waterroom. We had at least 4 inches of water most of the time. We had some very rough weather coming home. There were times we thought we might not make it home.
While the honor guard toiled on the deck in the waves, the powder monkeys risked being scalded as they were thrown near the hot boilers and furnaces. Keeping the boilers stoked with coal was vital to the ship's survival in the rough seas. Cross waves sporadically colliding with the ship's sides were the biggest threat to Olympia capsizing, resulting in the loss of the unknown remains and the crew.
The ship rolled 39 degrees.
Captain Erskine had the Marine Guard lashed to the rails to prevent their being swept overboard.
I began to feel sorry for myself, having to stand there in such a small area with the wind and rain pelting me in the face. But my sorry self didn't last long. I soon realized that what I was doing was little enough compared to what the unknown soldier had done.
The continued storm and dangerous conditions aboard ship prompted Captain Wyman to have Chaplain Edward Duff assemble all those not on watch for a prayer service in the ship's mess. Olympia sailed out of the rough seas and into the Chesapeake on November 7, 1921, and arrived at Pier 3 of the Washington Navy Yard at 1600 on November 9th.
God was with the ship and that he was watching over the crew, because a grateful nation was awaiting the ship that carried the unknown soldier.
I am now honored to introduce Vice Admiral Johnny Wolf, United States Navy Director, Strategic Systems Programs.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Admiral Cox, for setting the stage for the story about the voyage of the unknown soldier. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Looking around, I realize there are so many distinguished guests here today that it would take an hour just to name them, so I'm not going to do that. But I do want to acknowledge a few. Secretary Hogue, sir, thank you for being here. Lieutenant General Payet, thank you for being here. Fellow flag and general officers, veterans, past and present, thank you. So I'm going to, at the risk of repeating some of the things you've already heard, I'm going to go through yet again the story of the transit over, because I think if you really think about it, it bears repeating many times to really get the magnitude of what that day in transmit and what that transit was as they came across. So today we're honored to remember and relive the voyage our nation undertook to escort the unknown soldier to our shores and ultimately to his final hallowed resting place, which is sacred to all Americans. The Navy did not undertake this mission lightly. We began by assigning a renowned warship, as you heard, to the task, one which achieved her fame in the Battle of Manila Bay on May 1st of 1898. As Commodore George Dewey's flagship during the first major engagement of the Spanish-American War, the cruiser USS Olympia led a decisive victory against the Spanish. The fight began when Commodore Dewey uttered the famous order to Olympia's captain, "You may fire when you are ready, Ridley." The battle turned Commodore Dewey into a national hero. The selection of the Olympia was seen as a fitting tribute to the American patriots who died on the battlefield in Europe. Arriving in Le Havre, France, she prepared to receive the reins of the unknown soldier. I'd like to read to you directly from the Olympia's deck log from October 25th of 1921, and I quote, "At 2:20, the officers and crew were assembled on deck to take part in the ceremony of receiving the unknown warrior. At 2:30, the escort and body of the unknown warrior arrived on deck, and ceremonies were rendered by the French and the American Expeditionary Forces, after which the unknown warrior was placed on board. At 3:07, French cruiser Admiral Mcelveen was underway. At 3:08, signaled the lines. At 3:10, main engines reported ready for getting underway. At 3:28, underway at various speeds and courses until clear of the harbor. At 3:44, the French ship Varium fired a salute of 17 guns, which was answered gun for gun." End quote. Of course, as we heard, the casket was too large to fit below decks. The ship's carpenter placed in it a waterproof box on the weather deck at the stern. So it would be the carpenters and the Marine Honor Guard who would protect the unknown soldier's remains for the ocean crossing. Westbound across the Atlantic, Olympia encountered very heavy seas. Smaller than our cruisers today, the 5,500-ton ship was tossed around mercilessly by tropical storms, including remnants of the powerful 1921 Tampa Bay hurricane. Captain Henry Wyman navigated the ship through 30-foot waves in confused seas, and the crew was worried, as we heard, that she may capsize. The rolling was made more extensive as she consumed more and more coal from her bunkers as the ship engineers struggled against the heavy seas, moving her center of gravity higher and higher, hour by hour. As Olympia took a beating, so did her crew. On November 2nd, machinist Charles D. Bell, quote, received a lacerated wound of the scalp from a falling water bucket. Injuries continued as fireman Armin Thistle, quote, received a lacerated wound of the head by falling through the bow bars on a cylinder head. Despite these challenges, Olympia's tough and competent sailors kept her on course. Neither hurricanes nor heavy seas could deter Captain Wyman from maintaining discipline on board. He even convened a summary courts-martial and held captain's match during the voyage. To guarantee the safety of the unknown soldier's remains, 2 additional honor guards were added to the watch, securing the casket at the height of danger should it come loose. As giant waves violently pounded the ship, these fearless Marines did not leave their post. Just imagine the terror of lashing yourself to the rails of a heavy warship, exposed to weather like that, and being pummeled by 30-foot seas. 39 Marines in all stood watch over the unknown soldier to keep him from being walked overboard during that treacherous transit. As the storm raged, and as Chaplain Edward Duff assembled the crew in prayer, were their prayers answered? All we know is that finally the weather broke. The crew must have been very relieved at the sight of Cape Henry Light in Virginia, which they passed to port as they turned towards the calm seas of the Chesapeake Bay on the night of November 7th. Discipline, seamanship, divine intervention. Each of these was needed in equal measure for the Navy and Marine Corps team to protect the unknown soldier from being lost at sea. After aching overnight, Olympia was escorted by the battleship North Dakota and the destroyer Bernardo up the Potomac River, finally tying up here at the Navy Yard 100 years ago today on November 9th. Again, from the deck log, and I quote, "At 4 o'clock began moving the body of the unknown soldier. Started salute of 21 guns. At 4:06, the body was placed on an Army Kaizen and was officially delivered into the custody of the Army by Admiral Chen." End quote. General of the Army John J. Percy was here to receive custody. While the sea services completed their mission, the century-long guardianship of the unknown soldier in his final resting place at Arlington National Cemetery was just beginning for the Honor Guard. Lastly, let us recall that unknown soldiers returned to American soil 100 years ago, and its interment at Arlington coincided with our Armistice Day. As the Great War was not, in fact, the war to end all wars. We continue the tradition commemoration on November 11th as Veterans Day. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my remarks, let us honor the sacrifice of those, like the unknown soldier, who gave their life in defense of freedom. May God bless our veterans, our brave men and women of our armed forces, past and present, who have stepped forward to defend our nation. May God bless the families also of those who serve, and may God bless America. Thank you.
The U.S. Navy Band will now perform America the Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Lieutenant General Walter Payet, United States Army Director of the Army Staff.
I think we get some applause for that one. We'll condition a very beautiful. In 1917, the United States entered the war that was raging in Europe since 1914. It was the war to end all wars. Many answered a call to leave their homes and fight a war over there. Young adults who put their lives and dreams on hold to fight a war a world away. The call for patriots to serve came in many forms. One in particular, in a song, Over There. Words like, Johnny, get your gun, take it on the run. Hear them calling you and me, every son of liberty. Soon their patriotism and dreams of victory met the ugly brutality of war. The death toll of this war was shocking. Shocking to a world who forgot or had never seen how brutal war is. And the price is paid in blood. The blood of a nation's youth. The song for volunteers played on. Make your mother proud of you. And the old red, white, and blue. Now in France, the songs of glory could no longer mask the ugliness of war. To many, death must have felt inevitable and perhaps the only way out of the horror they witnessed as they lived each day in sheer terror. Still, they served with great courage and honor over there for the preservation of freedom for the world. Young men aged beyond their years, dreams of a future, the love of a spouse, raising children, and building a family, fell in the mud and the dirt of a foreign land. As they went over the top, they had to feel that this was possibly their last day on earth. They may have questioned the senselessness of frontal assaults, yet they moved forward into no man's land where nothing lived. As they fell, spilling blood and breathing their last, perhaps dreams of home calmed them in their last minutes, knowing how they would be remembered, making mother proud. Many did not return alive, but they did come home. Yet many were buried in a foreign land for which they gave their life, and many more were never identified, giving their life and their identity for their country, yet forgotten in the soil of a foreign land. But their nation would never forget. Today we commemorate the anniversary of the return of our World War I unknown. An unknown patriot selected to represent all of those we lost during that war and allowing us to collectively mourn as a nation. We know not who this is, but what we do know is underneath that flag covering a casket that arrived here 100 years ago was a person who left their life in the United States to answer the call, deployed to France and paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, leaving behind a life and loved ones they would never see again, and a future they would never have. We won't know every brave and courageous act of that person's life,
Those acts are known but to God. But we know the final act was fighting for freedom and guarding the American way of life. As this person and others lost gave their last breath guarding our freedoms, it is only fitting we honor and eternally guard this patriot and the other unknowns. The World War I unknown soldier returned to American soldier in this very place we stand today, exactly 100 years ago. And returning the unknown, as we have heard, was a feat that required assistance from our French allies and all services, working together through sheer spirit of cooperation, demonstrating our commitment to properly honor all who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Many leaders were on hand to receive the unknown soldier, including the Army Chief of Staff, General of the Armies, John J. Pershing. The follow-on procession led by the 3rd Cavalry Regiment accompanied the horse-drawn caisson containing the unknown soldier to the Capitol Rotunda, where more honors bestowed and respect paid by over 90,000 visitors, including President Warren G. Harding. Then, on a brisk November 11th, the 3rd anniversary of the end of the war, 8 highly decorated World War I veterans, 5 soldiers, 2 sailors, and 1 Marine, handpicked by General Pershing himself, escorted the unknown soldier to Arlington National Cemetery for a solemn ceremony where President Harding delivered an address and presented the unknown the Medal of Honor. Dignitaries from other allied countries also presented their medals. General Pershing scattered a handful of French soil into the tomb, and the chief of the Crow Nation, representing all warriors, honored the unknown soldier by placing his feather war bonnet on the crypt. The unknown was lowered into the ground as the 3rd Cavalry played taps and the Army artillery fired a final salute. The unknown could now rest in honored glory. Today, the tomb of the unknown soldiers is guarded by the soldiers of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Undoubtedly, one of our Army's most sacred duties. World War I and the wars and conflicts that followed show the price of freedom comes at a heavy cost. The unknowns remind us of that cost of freedom. Fathers, sons, brothers, husbands, mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice for the ideals we hold so dear and protecting the people that will never know their names. In the words of President Harding at the dedication ceremony, I quote them now, "He might have come from any one of millions of American homes. Some mother gave him in her love and tenderness and her most cherished hopes. Hundreds of mothers are wondering today, finding a touch of solace in the possibility that the nation bows in grief over the body of one she bore to live and die, if need be, for the Republic." End quote. For those that are unknown and unable to witness the appreciation of a grateful nation because their final acts of service took place far away from their home and their loved ones with stories to go untold, we will remember them. We must remember them. But we must also do more. We must honor their life by living ours, committed to the freedom for which they served.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, allow me to direct your attention to the video wall in front of you. On October 25th in La Hague, France, a ceremony was held to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the departure of the World War I unknown soldier aboard USS Olympia on his final journey home. Armed Forces Network was there, and here is footage of that ceremony.
Today we're here in Le Havre, France. We're here to commemorate the centennial anniversary of the dignified transfer, the first unknown soldier back to the United States. The dignified transfer first happened 100 years ago, October 23rd, 1921, at 1505, and we're actually going to start the ceremony at 1505, 100 years later, to commemorate. From looking around, we have quite a few people here, French, American, a lot of French civilian authorities from the city of Le Havre, as well as throughout the country. Really does solidify that special relationship that we have. They helped us during, obviously during the Revolutionary War, they saved us, and it's how we became free now. And then vice versa, 100 years ago during World War I, when we first came over, helping them out as well as helping World War II.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Robert Hogue, Acting Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Manpower and Reserve Affairs.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Distinguished guests. I have a friend down here, Major General Olson, Senior Marine on hand. I want to say good afternoon on behalf of the Secretary of the Navy, the Honorable Carlos Del Toro, and welcome you to this ceremony. This is a solemn commemoration for all of our unknown dead. For that's what this soldier who arrived a century ago represents. He is the embodiment of those who have represented our country in battle, on the seas, in the skies, and on the fields of more than 4 continents. They faced the most difficult environments imaginable, where they tested their courage and sacrificed their youth. As the Acting Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, I represent the people component of the Department of Navy. Sailors, Marines, civilians, frankly what I believe to be the most critical assets to advancing our mission then and now. Today we remember the people, those who are lost to history, those who passed unrecognized amid the destruction and chaos of combat. We remember them for their unwavering commitment to service in the first great war. Their selfless actions, their bravery, their service to the country above all else. It enables us to be here today, and it inspires the current generation who serve. Others will describe the process by which our unknown was chosen and how in death he came to represent thousands of unknown dead from unmany wars. While our tribute is fitting, we must guard against romanticizing epic battle, as if heroic death gives meaning to life. We should not diminish the whole, for in doing so we risk diminishing the sacrifices and the magnitude of the courage shown. Since this week is also the celebration of the 246th birthday of the United States Marine Corps, let me share with you one Marine's testimony to what he witnessed in June 1918 at Belleau Wood, where the Marines met the formidable German infantry for the first time. There, the fighting was close, small arms and hand to hand. At Belleau Wood, in just one day, we lost nearly 1,100 Marines, including 31 of 32 officers, the worst single-day casualties in Marine Corps history. This passage is from the War Diary of Sergeant Major Claude Charles Henry, 5th Regiment, U.S. Marines, American Expeditionary Forces. It memorializes the hard fighting that drove the Germans from the fleet. The first sergeant and entire officer first force of Company L, 3rd Battalion, were killed today. You can see the towns along the horizon here burning, and at night, the sky is all lit up with artillery fire, flares, burning villages, burned earthly shrapnel. Our casualty reports are coming in thick and fast now, and it seems everybody I know has either been killed or wounded. We have driven the enemy back, in some places 3.5 kilometers, and the ground is full of German and American dead. Our dead are being piled alongside the road, as there is no time to bury them, not enough men to do it. This, it seems, is the cost of democracy. as the mother of Corporal Jason Dunham, who threw himself on a grenade at Iraq to save his fellow Marines, once told me, the price of freedom is blood. Raoul Lookberry, the American ace from the Lafayette Escadrille, and one of America's first fighter pilots, said famously, "There will be no end to the war for the fighter pilot." I think he meant they're all going to die. And he went up anyway, and he did in fact die in air combat over France. He didn't expect to live, yet he flew out to meet our enemies. It is this knowledge of the fate before them that provides the measure of that courage. It is this sacrifice, having unimaginable courage to subordinate even the most basic instinct, survival, and move forward in the face of so much death, that drives us to ensure we have honored even those whose lives passed in anonymity. It is the knowledge that they had that kind of courage that calls to us, brings us to this place, and to every place that received our soldier, in the hope that our standing in his honor will make us worthy of his sacrifice. But I fear that in our society, the soldier is increasingly unknown. Try for a moment to envision the man inside the marble, see what he looks like. Be honest with yourself. And anyone here envision that a soldier is black. In fact, 380,000 African-Americans served. 380,000. A soldier may well have been black. And while there's no reason to think that our soldier is anything but a man, remember that unknowns have been added for World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. They'll be added again for future wars, drawing from a force that increasingly represents the America that you see outside these walls. Rather than standing on our own unknown's behalf once again, I ask that you stand every day out of respect for all those who serve, and understand that behind the marble banners tomorrow might well be a woman, might be an immigrant, might be a member of the Crow Nation, could be a transgender. The face of this nation is changing. Those folks have already stepped forward, taken the oath, received the training, accepted the sacrifice that they may have to make tomorrow. So let us resolve here that we will not wait for them to become, that we will acknowledge them today. For more than 2 centuries, our military has risen to meet the challenges of our competitors. They are a team that is bonded together by a deep-seated sense of duty to our nation, and they will always overcome the challenges that they face in our interests. To help them, they need the best of all our people. Today, we remember the courage of the young men on that ship, the Olympia. And we remember the fallen who did not have a chance to return home to grow, raise their families, or contribute to their communities. We must also acknowledge and embrace the fact that the face of our nation has changed, and that tomorrow's unknowns, whoever they are, deserve this same respect. As strong as our country was a century ago, we are stronger today because of our willingness to assess the strength of the whole society. I salute those who have gone before us, and those who serve today, and those who will serve tomorrow. Let us remember that we are a resilient, tenacious, grateful people, united by our ideals, who believe in the value of protecting our freedoms and liberty, who will sacrifice for each other when called upon to do so, and who will stand anytime for those who do. Thank you for allowing me to talk to this.
I am now honored to introduce Sergeant Major Gavin Mcelveen, United States Army retired President of the Society of the Honor Guard Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Thank you, Admiral. Appreciate it, Mr. Secretary of Generals, distinguished guests. I'm moved by many of the remarks that I have heard here today as we remember the historic events that occurred in 1921. And as a tomb guard, I could probably stand up here for hours and tell you stories about the unknown soldiers, about our duty, about what it means to America. I would ask you that very same question of what the tomb of the unknown soldier means to you. But then I'd be here for hours. I know that's not the appropriate thing to do. As a tomb guard, it has been a special privilege to continue to educate America about each of the unknown soldiers' history during the centennial and to learn more about the history that has not been told from those that were actually there, and actually to lead a pilgrimage to France following in the footsteps of the World War I unknown soldier. Since Memorial Day, a special centennial flag, which is actually in the back of the room, has been flown or presented at key locations along the World War I unknown soldier's journey from America to France and back. Starting in Arlington National Cemetery, where the unknown soldier rests under the constant vigil of the Sentinels, the flag was first flown by the Tomb Guard platoon on Memorial Day of this year. It was then placed in a special case, and it traveled to the USS Olympia on September 27th, where it was flown on the fantail mere steps from where the casket would lay in honor in 1921. This was to mark the Navy and the Marine Corps' mission to bring home our unknown soldier. From October 21st through the 23rd, that flag was flown at 4 American Battle Monument Commission cemeteries, where in 1921, 4 unknown candidates were removed. Starting on Saint-Mihiel, at Marne, Somme, and finally at the Meuse-Argonne, we stood beside our French allies and our French veterans and community leaders to pay our respects to those who fell 100 years ago. On the night of October 23rd, the flag was ceremoniously draped across an empty casket, guarded by French and American reenactors in 1921 uniforms in the City Hall of Champagne. Here, the local citizens were able to learn about the events that occurred in their town and the role that they played in the unknown soldier's history. I can tell you that the outpouring of emotion from those citizens was overwhelming as an American. The next morning on October 24th, the city hosted a special ceremony marking the 100th anniversary of the selection, The Unknown Soldier by Sergeant Edward F. Younger of the United States Army. The mayor stressed to those present, quote, "It's a part of our history. We need to celebrate this for the younger generation so that they do not forget what has happened here." Carefully folded and placed again into its travel case, the flag then went to the port city of Louisville, where across the great Atlantic was unfolded during the dedication of a special plaque to mark the spot and time that the unknown soldier was transferred into the care of the sailors and Marines of the United States ship Olympia to begin that final leg of his difficult journey home. Today, that same flag will be used at ceremonies here in a few minutes to mark the unknown soldier's arrival here 100 years ago today, when he finally returned to his native land. The flag will then be presented at the U.S. Capitol on November 10th, where so many of our Gold Star families, veterans, fellow Americans paid their respects to he who represents all. The flag will finally be flown once again at Arlington National Cemetery by the platoon on November 11th, completing that journey home. Inside the case is the flag, or a portion of the wooden decking from the USS Olympia. Marble shavings from the plaza of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, from the recent reconstruction, which has made it look so beautiful. Soil from France and remnants of the crushed headstones, the 3 unknown candidates who were not selected, but were reburied in Meuse-Argonne Cemetery when their headstones were replaced earlier this year. On behalf of the Society of the Honor Guard, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, I want to thank the Commandant of the Naval District, Washington, for graciously accepting our gift of a historical plaque to mark the location where the unknown soldier returned home from France. It is our hope that this plaque brings more visitors to the museum to learn not only about the unknown soldiers, but our nation's naval forces that protected, not for self, but for country, as they returned them home. It is quite fitting that both sides of the Atlantic, there are plaques honoring the service and sacrifice of this unknown American who fell in the defense of others. Tomb guards have a saying: no soldiers forgotten until they die. Tomb guards never forget. Thank you.